For that.
They only see what they want to see, and if they don't want to see it, or they don't want to, I guess, have that feeling of something that proves against their beliefs, they're just gonna ignore it, or the brain or the ego automatically just shuts it off or ignores it. And it's good that it does that sometimes, but I mean, when someone's trying to change, or you need to open up your, your thoughts, it sucks.
Hey guys, it's Troy here.
James here.
So, hey guys, it's Troy here.
And it's James here.
Hey, today we're here to talk about a very, a topic that really impacts all of us. How often have you been in a scenario where you got into a heated debate with someone that, that sort of disproved your beliefs or made you question your beliefs? And you ended up doing a bunch of research, you gathered all of this data, and then you went back and you talked to them about it, but then they, only to be proven that, there's another way to think about it, right? They had their own supporting evidence, and, this might look like, someone saying, cell phones cause cancer, right? And you did all this research, and then they proved that, there were studies that showed that cell phones don't cause cancer, right? Or maybe you've been in a scenario where you have gotten feedback from, your spouse, a teacher, a coach, someone, maybe a superior even, right? And you just couldn't see eye to eye with them. And after you thought about it and you reflected on it, you realize that maybe they do have a point, right? The point is that this really impacts all of us, and the reason why we have these experiences, and a big reason why we, don't grow and transform as quickly as we want to, is because of confirmation bias, right? And James is going to talk about what confirmation bias is.
Okay. Confirmation bias is basically the tendency for people like us to search for information or interpret information a certain way that affirms our beliefs already. So tons of stories about this, very recent ones, maybe when we're younger too, like even in university arguing with friends. We only search for stuff that supports our argument and not theirs. So this happens pretty much all the time, and I think confirmation bias is good and bad to an extent. It helps us, have shortcuts in our minds where we can actually find information easily. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Like it almost like it simplifies our understanding of the world, and it allows us to really, maneuver and navigate through it quickly, right? So that we don't have to get, we don't hit these roadblocks every time we encounter something, right? And I think that all of us have, certain personal experiences where, this was really applicable, and sometimes, or oftentimes, we do this subconsciously, right? Sometimes we do it consciously, and we just, we just think it's a normal practice. But, talk to us about like some of the experiences that you've had.
Yeah, I guess a big one that happened recently is like I bought a new car, right?
Yeah.
So posted on Instagram. I had a huge caption explaining what the car meant to me and why I was posting it. But I got a ton of direct messages on Instagram from a lot of people that I guess see me as someone that's never gonna change, that's always gonna be materialistic, and automatically they said, "Oh, so yeah, I thought you're not about this materialistic life.
Yeah.
You're not chasing money, materials, or anything, but you bought a nice car like that."
Yeah.
And my, I guess, argument or my response was, I like nice stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not materialistic. I still like nice stuff though. I'm not buying mindlessly like I used to. But to them, they're like, you're never gonna change. You're gonna be materialistic to me all the time.
Right.
That confirmed their belief about me already.
Right.
And at that point, I guess I didn't really care.
Yeah.
Like, you can think whatever you want.
it's almost like they're, you know, viewing you through a certain lens, and they really couldn't see outside of that,
They've
right?
got tunnel vision for a certain way.
Tunnel vision, and you know, their judgment and their assessment is just clouded, right? Clouded with these, you know, these biases and, you know, things that they've collected to support that argument, but they don't really see all of the other things that you have been doing, you know, all of the growth that you've been going through, and, you know, it's frustrating to encounter that.
They only see what they want to see, and if they don't want to see it, or they don't want to, I guess, have that feeling of something that proves against their beliefs, they're just going to ignore it. Or the brain or the ego automatically just shuts it off or ignores it. And it's good that it does that sometimes, but I mean, when someone's trying to change, or you need to open up your, you know, your thoughts, it sucks.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And you know, I've had personal experience like this as well too. You know, more closely to me. Like I've had, you know, my girlfriend, for instance, you know, she would tell me all the time, like, hey, you spend way too much time, you know, at work, at the office, you know, working on these projects, but you don't spend enough time on the relationship. You don't spend enough time on us, right? And for me, it's kind of like, I was like, no, that's not the case, right? You know, like we spend so much time together, and I would just come up with all of these different arguments, like, hey, remember that time we spent time together, you know, on Wednesday or last Friday, or, you know, the time that we spent together, you know, last month when we went on a trip, you know. And, you know, when we get this way and we become too tunnel visioned on, you know, one belief, especially when it's close to close to the ego, right? Or it's associated with the ego, I think it's really hard for us to let go of it, right? And, you know, it's tough, man. Like it's like you so badly want to be right, and you want to be like, hey, yeah, you know, you see, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I think I told you before we started filming, the medications. Tried 9 different kinds, and then when this one I felt like was working, I felt like it. So then someone at work said, "Oh, something's different about you." That confirmation bias kicked in. It's like, then I told myself, "Oh, I think it's working." Yeah, but I don't know. It's only been a week or 2 weeks, I think, since I started it. I don't remember.
And you know, it's amazing what like how our minds can play tricks on us, right? And you know, I think of the brain as, you know, this really efficient machine that wants to do things efficiently. And you know, when we have, you know, I think there's a quote that says that there's like, we go through like 70,000 different stimuluses in a day, right? Stimuli, right? And you know, in order for our brain to navigate and sift through all of this, and you know, actually allow us to function, we have to be able to hold these biases, but they can impact our judgment, right? And they can also impact our lives. So how have you been able to deal with these?
Really good question. How did I deal with the biases? Any biases? It's hard, like for me too, because I still think about, like, I want to be right all the time. I have a huge ego. I don't know about you, but everyone knows I have the biggest ego in my family, so I never want to be wrong. But I mean, how I do it is I usually, if I'm having an argument with you or a friend, I would try to understand their argument more. And if their argument sucks, which usually does, in my opinion, I would try to form an argument for them, like the strongest argument on their side. So instead of just being that straw man and saying, oh, poking holes at their argument, I would find their strongest argument, and then I could work against that if I am correct, right? So that's really helped me to understand, okay, this guy thinks this way because this is probably what it is. And then now, even with that confirmation bias, I can confirm that I am right, maybe. if I can argue against their argument, right? So, I mean, that's one of the things I've done before. But going back to like the 70,000, I guess, stimulants we get, like our brains go on autopilot all the time, right? Like there's that saying, we make about 35,000 conscious decisions a day. And after 70, we get decision fatigue. So I mean, these biases help us to navigate those automatic things, right? So
yeah, no doubt, man. And you know, I think like for me, you know, one thing that I've been trying to become more conscious of is that it's easy for us to judge judge things in the moment.
Yeah.
Right. It's because of that autopilot mode that you described, right? We just we hear something, and if it doesn't align with what we believe or our values, or it conflicts with our interests or our ego, right? Then we're just nope, that must not be true. We just go into this defensive mode, right? And I think that a strong sign of emotional intelligence is when you're able to not judge things in the moment, when you're able to actually remove yourself from that situation so that you can actually interpret and process and reflect and think about the scenario and think about the different possibilities with it, and then come up with a much more informed decision, or come up with a much more informed evaluation of the scenario, right? So it's so challenging, because when it impacts your ego, you're ready to go, right? You're ready to defend yourself. And especially when things get emotional or things get heated, it's even easier to just forget all of that and be no, I know I'm right. Let's solve this right now. Let's deal with it and get it over with, right? And when you're busy and you have a lot on your mind, or you're stressed out, it's even easier to do these things. So I'm not saying that I definitely have not perfected this, but I think one thing that I'm trying to do is just trying to be able to remove myself from these situations when I know it's not, when I know there's even a slight possibility, right? And just come back to it and reflect on it.
Yeah, I think I got an argument with someone I'm seeing now. Not really an argument, it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And I said something to kind of upset her in a way, and I guess for me, I want to know, what's wrong? What's wrong? You know what I mean? They say nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong, but something's wrong. Yeah. And what ended up happening was, I guess she wanted me to open up first. So I told her, okay, I have something to tell you, but I need some time to think about it. So I took myself out of that situation and told her I need to put some thought into what I'm going to say first before I say it. I don't want to come off the wrong way.
Yeah.
So that's also another thing, being more mindful of how you think you're going to come off. And meditation helps with the confirmation bias as well. So you take yourself out, and then you see your thought just kind of sitting there, and you could see, oh, that thought is wrong, or something like that.
Yeah. I think what it really boils down to, these different strategies to try to minimize the amount of confirmation bias we go through. Because again, it's we were talking about this before this shoot, but it's almost impossible to completely get rid of confirmation bias, because we need it in order to navigate through life. Can you imagine if in going through the 70,000 stimulus and not being able to use some lens to be able to efficiently go through it? So these strategies really just boil down to being able to take ourselves outside of our outside of the situation, view it from somewhat of a more objective standpoint, or from a third person's standpoint, and being able to empathize and understand how someone else could have a certain perspective or an evaluation. And I think one thing that has really helped me in doing that is just knowing that ultimately what it comes down to is that our experiences and the way that we think and the way that our behaviors, they all come from our past experiences, right? Sometimes it's childhood experiences, sometimes it's experiences that we've, traumatizing experiences that we've had in our adult life or adolescence or what have you, or, ultimately these experiences shape the way that we think and the way that we view the world, right? And our understanding of the world. And I think that helps me gain some peace of mind, because I know that it's not the other person trying to they don't have any ill intent. Yeah, they don't have any ill intent. I think they're feeling a certain way, and they're just letting me know, I think this and I feel this way about it. And then I guess with the confirmation bias or whatever biases that we have, we're gonna argue against it because you feel like you're right. Yeah. Right. But yeah, it's tough, man. It's I think it's one of those things that it's sort of it's a work in progress, and you'll never perfect it, but you always, as long as you're aware and you're actually consciously trying to improve on it, you'll always get a little bit better with it, right?
I think this might sound pessimistic, but I mean, yeah, we're a race that has known to screw things up. Our species screws everything up. So I mean, look at the environment, right? And now we're trying to be proactive with it, but I mean, we're very reactive. So I mean, that's the same thing. Like the biases that we have, it's just a very natural thing for us to do, right? So I mean, that's who we are. But being able to pull yourself back, that's the high. You talked about EQ before, right? High EQ, being able to pull yourself back from that, and trying to understand what this person's feeling. Why are they talking to me about this? Like with your girlfriend, why is she telling me that I don't spend enough time on this relationship? And then understanding that.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's all I had in terms of how I navigate through these situations. What about yourself?
Well, I guess that is it. But the big thing is just understanding you can't get rid of biases, even though you think you're not biased. We all have flawed minds to an extent. No one is really objective either. That's what I want to get to, because we all have these biases that is formed from our experiences and people we've met, so that when we think we're objective, we're actually only objective to what we think is right. I guess, if that makes sense.
No doubt. We're emotional creatures, right? We weren't put on this earth to not experience emotions, because, well, we wouldn't be human. So that's all that we have, guys. If you haven't tried these strategies already, try them out, and let us know what you think, right? We're always interested in hearing whether or not they're helpful, and share with us what strategies you guys are personally using to navigate through these biases as well. Until next time.